Everyone dreams of living an uncommon life, and the best asset you have to achieve your dreams is you. Welcome to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living uncommonly. We're also going to give you some tools and strategies for building wealth and for pursuing an uncommon path that is uniquely right for you.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Aaron Kramer.
And we're excited to bring another one for you today. This is an exciting one. We have multiple guests on this one.
Trio going on.
And they've written a book, which always makes you think like, well, they mean some business. Okay. And so what I would say about this just earlier, just kind of getting to know, this is actually Aaron Kramer's people that brought on. So he's going to be the most of this, kind of the tip of the spear, as you will. But just talking to them, I cannot wait to unpack this content.
It's fun.
Yes.
So I know Jeff. Jeff is like, he's an entrepreneur, scholar, super smart. I'm going to save some questions here so you don't spoil it. Like how many languages he speaks and things like that.
Wow.
Super fun to talk to. And he's introducing us to Matthew and Tony at the same time here for this trio.
Right.
But these are some really top end, smart, top of their careers.
Yeah.
People.
So here's what I get excited about. One, here's who we are. If you guys are just listening to because the guests, I get it, but thanks for listening. But we're advisors that really get passionate about telling people they're your best asset. You are your best asset. There won't be a stock market. There won't be a stock. There won't be anything else, but you are going to be putting more money in your pocket than anything else. And we want to be advisors that not only help you get more money, but we want to make sure that you're enjoying it in the process. And so when I get excited about people who have talked to a lot of people, gleaned a lot of wisdom from them, and then compiled information, I love it because they've done the hard work for us. That's why these people are on the show.
Yes.
All right. Who wants to start talking first? But welcome to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. You guys are on.
Jeff, you got to introduce your friends here.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. A couple of years ago, as a pandemic project, Tony Thelen of John Deere fame and Matthew Mitchell, with whom I have the pleasure of leading Baton Global and working with at Drake University, thought up an idea about how to help people early in their careers. And we now, in October of 22, published a book called Am I Doing This Right? So what we're going to do, I think, is we'll tell you a little bit about the origin story of the book. I'm maybe going to pass it to Tony so he can talk about the very initial thing that led to gathering the data. And then we'll tell you a little bit more about the format and hopefully inspire you to become the fourth author with us if you grab a copy and dig into the content.
There we go. I mean, the copy of the book just is like the story of my life every day.
Am I doing this right? Yeah. This is a great title.
I
love it. Okay. Thanks for the introduction, Jeff. All right. Matthew, Tony, who's going to be the first one? First, John Deere. You got out of John Deere. I see.
Yep.
That's exciting.
No, I'm
You're still doing it?
Still with John Deere, but in the spring of 2020, when the pandemic was bearing down, I really started to think about my broader arc of my life and, how can I stay positive and constructive? And secondly, how can I do something that I'm in control of while things around the world are falling apart? So I decided to go back to school and get a PhD. And I decided to write a book about the lessons I've learned over 35 years with John Deere.
Brilliant.
And through a series of daisy chain conversations around the United States, talking to professors, one of them said, you need to talk to Matthew Mitchell. He's in Des Moines. He's right next to you. He would have some bright ideas for you, and he might even sponsor your PhD. So I got really excited, and I was like, this is great. Hometown, colleague that I could work with. And I called Matthew, and after 1 hour of explaining to me what really happens when you get your PhD and what it, brings to life, he talked me out of going after the PhD. And it was some of the best advice I ever got in my life.
Love it. That's uncommon advice.
Yeah.
Even today, I seriously thank him from the bottom of my heart for the grounding that he gave me on that solid advice. But at the end of that conversation, he said, but tell me more about this book. And I said, well, funny you should mention that. I put a survey out on LinkedIn. I'm overwhelmed with the level of stories I'm getting, the number of them, the depth of them, the sincerity of them, people pouring out their life's greatest lessons. But I had a problem with the volume and the scale, and I didn't know how to handle it. And Matthew explained, hey, there's text analytics software that can help you cluster some of that information to draw insights out. And I might be able to help you with that. And I says, tell me more. And that led to bringing Matthew on as a co-author and later Jeffrey. And for the next year, we worked via Zoom, independent, did not meet each other in person for a year, working on that manuscript. And I tell you what, my original version of it only got better during that time and got more complete over that time frame. And that's ultimately what led to the book that you saw earlier in the program.
Yeah. No, that's good. I've got a question for you. Tony, are you married?
I am.
Nice. Kids?
30 years and 3 daughters.
3 daughters. Okay. So when you come to your wife and is like, hey, I want to go back to school, or I want to pivot here, or I want to create something, tell me how instrumental she was in either supporting or like, I'm tapping out, Tony, don't do this.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about that.
It's actually the opposite. You don't survive 35 years of John Deere and moving around the nation 9 times in 14 years. Yeah. And you don't survive 30 years of marriage, raising 3 daughters without having a supportive spouse. So the first thing she said was, how can I help? And I says, well, I'm not that familiar with Google Forms or Microsoft Forms. Can you help me design a survey? So she actually designed the actual survey that went out to LinkedIn to get the information. So very supportive from day one, as in, how can I help?
That's awesome.
Yep. And then Matthew, you get a call and you say, hey man, you don't want to do this. Like, it's going to be expensive. And at the end of the rainbow, hold back. So tell me about that conversation. I'd love to start there and then take it away.
Listen, if we're talking about living uncommonly, it took about 30 seconds for me to recognize that Tony lives uncommonly. He lives a life that he owns, he charts out, and just has a privilege to impact those around him, and is magnetic in many ways, but pours himself into others with challenge and compassion, right? So challenging us to be sort of our best, but also compassion when we don't sort of live up to our own expectations or his. And within a few moments, it was somebody that we wanted to hang around, to be, associated with. You are the company that you keep. And he had a passion for sort of telling these really heavy stories. They were flowing into his inbox. And I would say, in his words, he was impressed, but also humbled. When you ask people questions like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? What's your biggest regret in life? It's an invitation to others to tell their stories. And then how you handle those stories is a testament to your character and a testament to Tony's character. And he's like, okay, now I have to steward these stories. I have to, address these stories with respect and responsibility and honor and lift up these stories. And that's ultimately what became the book. And I would say he started with an idea of 60 themes that came out from all of the data. And ultimately we tailored and crafted it down to 18 ideas, because most of the best advice we've received based on our data is early on in our life. And so we identified 18 to 25, 18 to 30 as that formative period. And we have, 4, and maybe this is a good opportunity just to give you a little bit of background about the structure of the book, but we have 4 key questions that we answer in the book. And it's things like, who am I? Mm-hmm. Where do I want to go? How will I get there? And what can I learn along the way? So within each of these 4 sections, we've got things like, balance, purpose, well-being, which was probably one of the dominant themes of all leaders. Other things like goals and giving and receiving feedback. How will I get there? We talked about teamwork, relationships, and overcoming adversity. And then I think of particular importance to you, Philip and Aaron, the 4th section has, what can I learn along the way? Learning, resilience, listening. But then we focus grouped it with a lot of young people, and they said, we really need some, very practical guidance on financial literacy. Tony then came back and said, what is it, Tony? The 4th wonder of the world or the 8th wonder of the world is compound interest.
Oh, yeah.
And we wrote an entire chapter on financial literacy, which was just a huge hit.
And that goes for career advice as well. The earlier you get it, the more it pays off down the road.
Yeah, I'm a simple person. So sometimes when I hear a lot of characters, I just want to know and how they fit in. So one of you, I want to know each specific role that you had in writing this book. And then how did you define those roles? Because you were remotely. So like, did you have to all right, let's talk through this here. Or was it just like a natural fit? But first, let's talk about like whose role, what they do. So myself and the listeners can understand that.
Tony, why don't you take it and we can go into the framework of each chapter?
Yeah, I started out with a vision in mind, and we even kept the title as the North Star that pulled us along throughout all of this. And I was going to write the book no matter what, it was going to be something at the end of the day. So I kept true to that vision. I brought forward my part of my 35 years in each beginning part of the section of the book. Each chapter has a story that's very personal from my life and serves as a constant theme to open up each individual chapter. And then after meeting Jeffrey and Matthew, the depth of the book deepened when we started to put on each chapter tools and techniques that they saw were effective in the university setting as well as the consulting setting on that particular topic. Then on the third section of each chapter, we pulled in elements from that survey. And that's where it was serious help from Matthew and Jeffrey using text analytics software to really understand the science behind massive amounts of input and then selecting the most important tidbits of advice from people all around the world. And then the fourth section of each chapter is questions that we came up with. And I would say the three of us put that together in the benefit of all of our career and put down the most thoughtful questions at the end of each chapter. In looking back on it, I probably had the architecture of the book in mind and the vision of what it could become. Matthew and Jeff both seriously contributed to the final selection of the 18 chapters, as well as the tools and techniques. And then I can't say enough about the professionalism. And I know Jeff spent an inordinate amount of time helping to go through numerous editions of the manuscript to make sure that the text was consistent, to make sure that it flowed and there was a commonality in the manuscript from stem to stern. And together, the three of us, I feel like I couldn't have asked for a better team bringing those different tools to the project.
That's good. Thanks for going through that. That's helpful. I want to keep the end in mind here. What is the definition of success for, am I doing this right, writing this book from you guys' perspective?
Yeah, I'll jump in and then hand it. This is a good question for all of us to answer because it might have slightly different variations on it. But to me, did we make a difference in somebody's life? And did we serve somebody in a way that honors the thousands of people that served my career over 35 years? And is this a solid step forward in giving back to others? It was never, we agreed early on, it wasn't about making money. It was about producing a product that could be useful in a lot of people's lives. Matthew or Jeff?
Good. Jeff, take it away.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think one of the messages of the book is that you need to enjoy the journey to success, and that the definition of it may change as you go through your lifetime, as your career advances, as you have new experiences. We worked with 30 young leaders, that part of the book in hand, and they said, I want a perfect job right after college. And we all said, well, that's unlikely to happen. But if you're making deliberate decision, you're probably going the right way. And so in some ways, the direction is the direction that we're trying to orient people towards.
And I I would say, listen, Jeff and I both have had careers in industry and then moved back into the classroom. A very purposeful decision to have impact in people's lives in a very different way. And so we have that opportunity both intimately and in seminar sessions. I'm a teacher and professor at Drake University and literally teach the very first class to 250 entering first year students whose brain stems haven't fully formed yet. They're not quite fully human beings. And then I teach the very last class to the capstone MBA strategy. And so we have that opportunity. But when Tony invited us to participate in this project, it's how do you take that and scale it in a different way? But I know you guys have written your own book, and there's other reasons why you write books, right? It's a little bit of legacy. It's a little bit of self-challenge. It's a little bit of a tangible project and framework to capture your own reflections. And get them out into the public sort of sphere. And I would also say we joke, you don't write books to make money.
Amen to that.
For sure.
That'll preach.
Yeah. You don't even write books about money to make money.
Right.
But what we found is that writing a book gives you a platform. As professors, we write a lot of articles, and we write them for like 7 other people in the world that can understand them or who care. But books, it gives you an opportunity to talk to people. It gives you an opportunity to sort of dream with others. We spoke to 1,000 med students last week that sort of are focused on teamwork and how do doctors and nurses and psychologists and pharmacists all come together to work as a team. And a lot of the messages in this book really, I think, encourage and also empower those folks to do what they do best. And so getting a chance to meet those folks and celebrate their journeys is, I think, a key outcome. That's success, Aaron.
Totally. Okay, that's really good. I appreciate you guys walking through that. Last question. Here's what I would say that really gets me excited is that you wanted to serve the people that were behind the stories.
Oh, you guys are talking about that. I was like, this is music to
oh man. Like, because each one of these stories is individual and that story means the world to them. So the fact that they would actually go out and communicate that with somebody, one, it shows how much trust that Tony can get or in a quick way. Right. And then also how that they knew that after they said it, that it was going to be treated well. Like, It's not just going to be changed or like, hey, we're going to change this because this is not as good for sales or whatever. Like, no, we want to be a good servant of the story and represent you in a positive way. My next question, and then I want to go into the content of the book, and that's probably where we'll probably remain. But did you go hardcover or soft cover? Because that's important.
We went soft cover and
soft cover. Okay.
And Kindle. Yep. And Kindle.
Okay. All right. That's good. Yeah. We went hardcover and for ours and Kindle. And then somebody right after was like, well, you going to do audio? And I was like, stop. Like, we did hardcover.
Stop the insanity. We've got him. I mean, Tony, just his career at John Deere. And recently, I think we've seen a lot of stories about John Deere as a technology company. I would say Tony has been an instrumental part of that vision to transform the company from an iron company to a technology company. And so Tony, I'll let you tell the story, but he travels, Brazil, Kenya, all over the world. And so we have folks, India, sending us pictures. We got our hard copy. Am I doing this right? Translates pretty well.
Right. That's good. Okay, so what was the most, now we're going to get into content because I'm really excited to get this out, but what was the most surprising thing that came out of this book for you guys? Like, whoa, this is unexpected.
A little bit was the latter career consumption seemed to really resonate with a lot of people, that it was more timeless advice than what we thought. We thought first 10 years would be and it still is. I think the first 10 years or the grad school or the, college aged students, but we're getting lots of feedback and lots of grounding from people that, wished they would have had this earlier in their career, but it's very useful right now. Or those going through transitions or those just feeling like they need a fresh start in their career. That to me is that's a great welcome feedback. And then quite honestly, I never would have picked out from our focus groups. I kind of can get the finance one, but I looked at finance as more tactical in nature and like, okay, yeah, that would be good advice early in a career. But I never would have guessed the citizenship one and the pull towards kind of a yearning to be something other than a career, something other than about myself from our focus groups who were largely in that college age to 20 to 25 year range. The yearning to be a part of something bigger than themselves was loud in our focus groups. Those were a few of the surprises that I got. Matthew or Jeff?
Yeah, I'll jump in and turn it to Jeff. I would say that there was two main surprises. And the first one is we structured these chapters. It starts with a story from Tony. Then Jeff and I are academics, and we reviewed the literature for best practices. We call them leading practices. Then we feature the stories of the leaders that provided the data, the quotes, and we quote over 200 individuals in this book. Real meaty and impactful stories. But then here's I would say the biggest surprise for me was we always ended the chapter with reflection questions. And in the book, we gave space to journal, to reflect. And Tony, I think, coined this phrase, but, we have 3 authors that wrote the book. We have almost 1,000 leaders who, co-authored with us to pour their stories in, but it's not complete until the reader, writes their own story in that book. Those reflection questions, again, I use this as a textbook in a class of 250. I can't tell you how powerful the reflections are with these students and their lives, what they've been going through, obviously, post-pandemic, how they conceive of their self-image, how they describe their aspirations and their goals. I mean, they are just pouring themselves out in the pages of this book, and the power of the questions, Aaron, Philip, was probably the most surprising and delightfully, pleasantly surprising for me. I've got one other, but Jeff, I'm gonna welcome you in if you want to hop in here.
Yeah, I think since Matthew and I both teach lots of international topics, as we were putting the book together, we did have some concern about, how universal is this going to be? Will everyone relate to it in the same way? Are we going to be able to hit diverse audience? And thus far, from India to Brazil, in South Africa 2 weeks ago, and took the book with me and gave out some copies. We've been pleasantly surprised and I think delighted that there are some common elements, no matter where you are in the world, about the challenges that we face and the sorts of questions we wrestle with. And so I think a pleasant surprise has been the degree to which people all over have been benefiting from the text and the exercises.
That's awesome. For you guys, all you guys, because when you write a book like this, it has to be, I know that you're putting your own experiences in there and what you guys have learned and the data that you've pulled, but it has to be therapeutic. And just like you go through therapy, you learn stuff from yourself. Like you're going over stuff that you've already lived, but like re-going through it, you have to like see it in a different light and learn something. So like for you guys, what's like your biggest takeaway, like going through this again?
Tony?
Yeah, my big takeaway, great question, Aaron. My big takeaway was very reflective in nature, and that was how my purpose had changed over time. I evolved from a son to a brother, to a student, to an employee, to a husband, to a father, then to a citizen in the community, kind of, and then a leader that, shoulders more over time. It made me reflect deeply on my purpose. And, we come across these tools in the book that we share. And one of them is, I like to talk to people about, is a 90-day test. And it like, get your calendar out. How did you live your last 90 days? And putting that into this book reminded me of that. And I look back, how did I live the last 10 years of my life? and now I'm nearing the twilight of my career. How did I live my career and how do I want to live the next few years of my life? That was deeply impactful. And you start to sense that when you take on a project like this, that's supposed to reflect the best that's in you over time. And the purpose one hit me hard. And I can't tell you exactly when it hit me, but it was in the multiple manuscripts and, starting to look like a mirror and reflecting my life in these manuscripts. And I'm like, am I really living the life I want to lead and with intention and with,
right.
Where I want to be in the world? That was a great exercise for me in this process.
Awesome. Right. Kudos to you, because I think the best leaders are the ones that learning the most. And so you're writing this book, but also applying the principles in your own life. So that's powerful. And I would say that you guys mentioned this, but like the joy is in the journey a little bit. Aaron and I just shot a podcast of like, there's a gift in the grind. Like sometimes in the trenches, like the trials that you have, one to like, it produces like endurance and character and steadfastness, all these things that only a trial that can really produce. Because somebody who's like always had exactly what they wanted doesn't have the grit and determination. But for me, just there is something of just like stop, pause, take a look around, even when it's hard, because this might be the biggest gift in and of itself. Right? Is understanding how things are working, using a team, working together. Like there's just some really great characteristics that you just don't get in any other aspect other than like, sometimes you just got to one foot over the next in the discipline, grinding. And so I love that you guys pulled that out, and other people seem like it sounds the same way.
The pause principle. And Aaron, the way you set up the question, I love it. Listen, I'm just going to call myself a longtime listener, first time caller here. When we sort of dug into your site, when I see sort of what you offer, and you describe one of your services, financial planning, of course, but coaching / therapy. Mm-hmm. I mean, that we at Baton, and I will say the image of the baton is a staff that is sort of a walking staff for pilgrims and shepherds that sort of represents the journey. It represents curiosity. It represents not only living to work, but working to live, right? Mm-hmm. But at Baton, we do a lot of strategy work. And sometimes, Aaron, when somebody asks me what we do for large multinationals down to sort of nonprofits, I say 50% strategy, 50% therapy, because it's the joy of working alongside folks to walk them and with them in that journey. And very directly to your question, I just have to say, the biggest surprise for me in this physician heal thyself moment, because Jeff and Tony and I still come back to the book when we're having a tough day, we'll go back to adversity and resilience. But I would say Tony quickly pointed out that most of the leaders' feedback, especially around regrets and best pieces of advice, revolved around one key concept. I'm going to read a very short quote from a leader. And this was a mirror moment. I had to look myself in the mirror when we wrote this chapter, and it's about balance. This leader says, imagine your life as a game in which you're juggling some 5 balls in the air. You name them work, family, health, friends, and spirit. And you're keeping them all in the air simultaneously. You're going to soon understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. But the other 4 balls, family, health, friends, and spirit, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, they'll be irrevocably scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. They're never going to be the same. You must understand that and strive for balance in your life. And that was my biggest surprise, that's not just me. It's most of the leaders from all around the world that we encountered.
Right. I want to see did you ever get into like how important a community is? Like, cause I think of like you three seem like you're pretty tight knit. Like you have gone through an experience together that's going to bond you forever. Were there any things that you pulled out from interviewing all these people that you found that like having a strong community is invaluable?
I think the writing community is extremely supportive. Other authors were, in fact, I put the survey out early in the process to start it. I failed to mention the other thing I did was write 3 letters to 3 authors that I deeply respected and ask them to serve as our writing coach. And 2 of them got back immediately with absolutely. And the third one, I think I had the wrong address or something, but they, as soon as they heard about it, they're like all in. Yeah. And we had great coaches. We had people that were willing to dedicate inordinate amounts of time to deeply mark up early drafts. The generosity and support that we received once we explained what we were trying to create and what we were doing was also overwhelming. And that sense of community and sense of support for people that are trying to do something like this, I'll tell you what, I'm never going to forget it, because the day somebody asks me for help when they take on something complex, difficult, I'm there for them. Mm-hmm. All they need to do is ask, and I'll be there.
So cool.
It's such an awesome experience, because I've always said that it's interesting when you ask someone for help, or you want to dig into what they have going on. And when they come back to you with help, it's such a character, really showing their character, how good of a person they are. Because it seems like everybody today is like, oh, I don't want to help you. I got my own thing, or I don't want to tell you my secret. That makes my secret sauce. And it's I don't think really any of us have a secret sauce, except for the fact we just want to help one another. Yeah. But if we can spread that, I can only help so many people. Phil can only help so many people. You guys can only help so many people. But by spreading the knowledge, and it's cool because when you guys find that, and then it's awesome to hear that the author community is just like that.
Yeah, not only that, but you've given people tools to apply what they're learning in the book. I got to give you kudos to that, because a lot of times people just write the book, but you guys want people to actually change and write your own story in the book, literally. And how powerful that will be for them after they've read the book. I appreciate that. So,
and I just have to jump in, Philip. Aaron, what you said, asking someone for help. Listen, we're 5 guys, and I would say, having raised 2 young men, sometimes asking for help can be kind of difficult. And I've told them, over and over and over, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. We call it's generative. Mm-hmm. If I ask Philip for help, that generates sort of honor, respect, teamwork, solidarity. And it creates more than it imposes on someone else for something. And that togetherness, that teamwork, we write about it in the teamwork and the relationships chapter. Mm-hmm. You're not needy, you're not dependent. Asking for help is a sign of respect, and it generates more depth to that relationship. So 200%.
That's awesome. I love that you described it like that, because I would not have described it that well. Mm-hmm. But because even me, I'm a meathead, and I still even fall into this. I'm sure guys in general fall into this. Asking for help is hard.
It's hard,
right?
Yeah, it shouldn't be, but
it's very, very, very serious thing if you think about leaders. What leader hasn't had a little help in their career during a moment of doubt, or a moment of lack of self-confidence, or early stages of trying to get your feet on the ground? Right. Who hasn't had that? And a big feature of the book is to provide a reference group from global leaders everywhere for them to warm up to. And we've had some very heartwarming testimonials come back to us about younger people finding their voice earlier in their life. And really, that's kind of what we were after, is you are not alone, and you are living your life there's not going to be another one like it. The fingerprints that you're going to carry and what you're going to place on the world are going to be uniquely yours, but other people have been through other things, and you can learn from other people's experience to heighten and enjoy the journey. I just love the quote that I received from a CEO of Mutual of Omaha, and he probably said it best. He said early in his career, he asked a mentor for help, and in the next 5 years of his career. He said, I wish I had this book then. I learned on my own the value of hard work, humility, sharing success with others, empowerment, and teamwork. But I believe I would have gotten there faster and with less anxiety and less stress with this book in hand. That captures in a nutshell all of the advice we pulled together from global leaders. And we just want people to see it, use it. They're not alone.
Yep.
And go forward in your journey. It's your journey. Rock on, man.
Right. It's funny. I was doing a podcast and somebody said, when somebody passes away, a library burns. And you guys are trying to, yeah, that's deep, huh? But you guys are trying to like unlock those stories and then help the next person achieve what they want to achieve faster. So like, I got to tell, how do you get your hands on this book? I'm dialed in. I want to read this bad boy.
Listen, we distribute on Amazon, sort of the global repository for all books. You can come to our website, doingthisrightbooks.com. And there may be even a link there to get a signed copy shipped personally if you wanted to inscribe for some folks. Let's go.
Yeah.
And we are, I think, touring bookstores in your local area. If you do have a bookstore that you feel like it would be a good feature, or even organizations. What we've found, like we said, is retail book selling is a tough business.
Amazon isn't the play. Amazon is not the play.
Yeah. And but speaking to groups is just a phenomenally beneficial, way to take intimacy and scale it.
Mm-hmm.
When you can talk to one another sort of in a group setting and then one-on-one, that's fantastic. Also, I will say a lot of universities are adopting this book sort of for, one of our taglines at one point, Tony, if you'll remember, was, this is everything that business school never taught you.
Yes.
How do you network? How do you maintain your commitments? How do you have good resilience and teamwork? So there's lots of ways to get the book.
That would have been amazing for me. I'm like ADD and everything coming out of school, like having like good pathway for that. Man, instead of learning the hard way.
I'm glad you guys are getting traction, because here's at the end of the day, like it was a sacrifice for you guys to publish this book. Right? Like, I mean, financially, and we've already talked about it, like, you don't really do this to be getting paid. But if it can help somebody, like, oh yeah, I'll put a lot more money into this. Right. And so I just want to edify you guys and just kind of encourage you guys, like the way that you're doing it and why you're doing it is super encouraging. And like, I want to be able to definitely love that you're on the show. But I would love to encourage, like, I would love to help as much as I can just to help you guys impact more people. Cause that's what it's all about. Like, we're not doing this for our own glory. We're doing this so people can learn and understand and go faster and where they want to go, because we all benefit from it if we all can just help each other. So
I think one of your services you should put on your website is therapy for recovering authors.
Well, we do appreciate the invitation because, A's at home and A's at work, man. It's you want to live a good life, and, it's not all about a career. It's a successful career and a fulfilling life.
And that's the subtitle of the book. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Foundations for a Successful Career and a Fulfilling Life in that proportion that you desire.
Right. Man, there's something for everybody in this book. I hope the listeners go to their website, get the signed copy. It's going to be worth it.
This is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, all you, for all your time. Thank you for this small amount of time that we have. I'm a big fan. Thank you. You've been listening to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. I've been your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Aaron Kramer.
Till next time, go be uncommon.
That's all for this episode, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.